Welcome to the Bogosity podcast for the 26th of September 2011, the podcast that looks for immortality in the error bars. This is your host, Shane Killian, and joining me this week is...
Hello, my name is Jonathan LeSham. I'm a member of Libertarian Party Florida and a regular at the Bogosity forums.
And you're FS Blue Apocalypse, I believe.
Yes.
And this is the first time we've had a guest host on the podcast, so welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. Hopefully this won't be the last time.
All right, well, let's jump right into the news of the Bogus. I think the first thing we need to talk about here is really big news. Don't ask, don't tell is history, isn't it?
Yes, it is, even though our government kept trying to make it in there, but obviously if something is in the right, at some point it has to take place, and finally this policy is gone.
Yeah, it's actually been going on for quite some time because they had tried to do it before, and that's what resulted in Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It used to be gays couldn't serve at all, and so then they changed it, I guess, now as long as you're good at hiding the fact that you're gay, you could still serve, but now you don't even have to do that anymore.
Yeah, like I said, it's just a civil rights issue. We don't have a Don't Ask, Don't Tell Muslim, Don't Ask, Don't Tell Jewish, Don't Ask, Don't Tell. You know, what does it matter? This is a bygone era. Ultimately, like I said, from the reactions in the military, there isn't that big of an issue.
They all seem to be celebrating, it seems.
Exactly. I mean, everyone's thinking like this is going to be the end of the military as we know it, but, I think it goes back to human nature to where most people are good, fundamental people who simply don't care one way or other. As long as you have their back in a firefight, they don't care. Well,
and now, of course, they don't have to stay in the closet anymore, so we're finding out all sorts of people who have been gay and serving with distinction. Like one is Rear Admiral Alan S. Steinman, and he served for 25 years until he retired, I believe, in 97 is what the news story said. And he is someone who was loyal to the same partner for 15 years, so there was never any kind of, like, they were going to find him cavorting around in gay bars or anything like that. But he did say that it was like living in a fishbowl.
Yeah, like I said, and this goes back to, like, this idea of Don't Ask, Don't Tell peeled all of a sudden, all half the military be wandering around in assholes. Leather chaps.
Right.
Obviously that isn't the case.
No, I mean, no more than straight guys, going around in polyester leisure suits or anything like that. But there was another one, and this kind of broke my heart when I read this. It was Lieutenant Colonel Chris Rousey. She was actually afraid to go shopping with her partner and, was just afraid to be seen in public with him for fear she'd get kicked out of the military. And there was one time she needed an emergency operation. Her partner didn't even know about it until she looked at a list of U.S. casualties, because no one knew about her. No one could contact her to tell her there was this emergency. I mean, imagine that. You go through a list of U.S. casualties and you see the person you love there, and that's how you find out.
Oh, that's, like I said, this is just another reason why this policy had to be removed in the first place. It should be for the very same opportunities that the alcohol has.
Yeah, I mean, it's not about the right to go around cavorting in gay bars. It's about having the right to have the person you love notified if you have to go to the hospital or whatever. So hopefully this is one more nail driven into the coffin of bigotry.
I mean, like I said, I come into a state, like I said, no, we managed to ram through a supermajority defining marriage as a man and a woman, so I'm sure it is still going to be a very long fight ahead of us.
Yeah, they just introduced that here in North Carolina, too. So we still got a long way to go. But
one of the biggies is out of the way, at least.
Yeah, but I still just can't shake the feeling that, I mean, this is great, this is a victory, and I understand why everyone's celebrating, but deep down inside I kind of feel like, yay, now gays get to be sent to one of 900 permanent bases around the world, many of which aren't even at war, and most of them don't have anything to do with protecting us from an attack.
Yeah, how do you deny the servicemen go to Oktoberfest?
Yeah. Oh, but I mean, even things like killing innocent civilians in Libya or Afghanistan, or engaging in all these operations to get cheap oil or make people in the military-industrial complex rich, it's like, yay, now gays get to do that too.
Telling me it's not because they hate our freedoms?
Let's not get into that one. I think we've got enough comments about that one. But my reaction to all of this is I have nothing but love for the people who are serving in the military, and I respect them greatly. And that's why I don't want to see them misused like that.
I think the misuse is the perfect word. We now are simply occupiers, and occupied Europe for 50 years. We've occupied the Middle East now for a decade. Not to mention all our scraps, remnants of military technology are scattered all throughout the third world.
Right, and we're spending so much more than we did even in the height of the Cold War, even after you adjust for inflation. If we bring the troops home and actually have them doing the job they're supposed to do, protecting our borders, protecting us from attack, then maybe they can all be proud, not just because they're serving because they're gay, but because they're doing the job they actually signed up to do.
Well, Great Harry Brown said, we have best national offense in the world. We have a very mediocre national defense.
Right. So it looks like in the United States we may have executed another innocent man.
But, Troy Davis has all occurred, I guess you said before my time, so I was sort of reading and catching up, but I think fundamentally, I think following just whether or not we have the death penalty in the first place. We are killing innocent people.
Yes.
So I believe the Supreme Court, they had to prove their innocence.
Yeah, well, that's what one of the judges in this one was saying. Well, he didn't have any DNA evidence proving that it wasn't him. It's not his position to do that. They didn't have any DNA. They didn't have any fingerprints. They didn't have a murder weapon. All they had were, I believe, 9 witnesses. 7 of them recanted and said that they were actually pressured by the police into testifying against him.
Like I said, it's just such a messed up story from head to toe, and the idea the state has the ability to kill another human being. There are no cut and dry cases. For every Charlie Manson, there are plenty of guys on death row that are, questionable whether or not they should be there in the first place.
Well, none of them should be there, in my opinion, at least on death row. Lock them up.
Exactly. I'm just saying in terms of somebody who at least you have plenty of evidence for.
But, this is the thing that gets me. The proponents of the death penalty say, well, it's only done in cases where we're absolutely certain. No, it isn't. 7 of the 9 witnesses recanted.
Well, there's no murder weapon. There's no DNA for gets. There's no... do a whole podcast as to why eyewitness testimony is to begin with.
Right. And that apparently is all they had was eyewitness testimony.
But because the survey of those were ones made by the family of the victim,
well, I can be sympathetic to them because I have no idea how I'd react if, one of my family members was killed. So, people in that situation are not in a position where they can reasonably be expected to think rationally about it.
It just to me rang as if, we don't care as long as somebody dies for it.
Yeah, and that's the pure emotion behind it. They want somebody to pay for what's been done, and that desire for vengeance doesn't necessarily have you target the right person. Just target the first person you think Mike did it.
Furthermore reason why we should not have a death penalty in the first place, then.
Yeah, and that's why we need to respect the rules of evidence. Because we saw the same kind of thing after the Casey Anthony verdict. Everyone just had to believe that Casey Anthony was guilty, despite the fact that the evidence supporting that was lackluster at best, but everyone just had to believe it. Yeah, and it's one thing if you do that and you imprison an innocent person and then you find out they're innocent, you can let them go, but, if you kill them, then what do you do?
Whoops. Well, it's just, this just speaks volumes to the state's ability to kill somebody and why it is a very flawed process. Assassinated things.
So you wanted to talk about No Child Left Behind then?
Yes, Libertarian Party presidential candidate Arlie Wrights made a great opinion piece on No Child Left Behind. Basically, once again, seeing all the different failures of this act, how part of it's telling us, like I said, is over the next few years, most of the states and schools want to opt out of federal mandates because they're going to fail. Once all that's done, of course, then once you got the 20% of schools that are left, then whoever's president at that time can just say, hey, look at this, it actually worked.
Yeah. I hope North Carolina is one of the ones that opts out because I have an autistic son, and as far as I'm concerned, it might as well have been called the Screw Children with Developmental Delays Act.
What we need in this country is fundamental around the change our education system. Slapping down mandatory tests and teaching the kids how to pass the test, isn't going to work. I mean, it determines what funding they get. And ultimately, it screws children because they don't take those standardized tests. Another 2 months of school left, that's basically whenever they really become glorified babysitters.
Yeah, and the rest of the time they're teaching the tests and not the normal curriculum.
Exactly. So what's there to do? So I think with the no child left behind, it's ultimately done far worse, like you said, especially for children with developmental disabilities. And not to mention, like I said, in our city schools, it's just totally screwed everything, and it's just done everything up by the first-class education in this country.
Well, I don't think I've talked to a single teacher that's actually liked it and thought it was a good thing. And I talked to all sorts of people, left, right, libertarian, whatever, don't like No Child Left Behind. And what I don't understand about Obama is he could completely eliminate this without making any political, hey, it was passed under George W. Bush with a Republican Congress, and he could get up on a podium and read from his teleprompter about how the Republicans did this and they messed up education and we need to get rid of it. And why is he not doing that? I mean, everyone knows this is a failure. What's Obama doing?
Yeah, I think it just comes from a sort of a mindset of, okay, whoever sold this idea to Bush, selling it to the same guy, selling it to the same thing, and it's the same reason why we don't have choice. It's the same reason why we have it. This country is sort of a screwed up thing from the get-go.
Well, and it's one more example of we create a government program and it doesn't work, and then we can't get rid of it.
A big fan of Dutch model schools, or essentially each school charter school and function independently, because that creates competition, creates just a whole lot of opportunities for kids.
Right. Well, and a lot of these people are the same people who say, well, we need the government to protect us from monopolies because monopolies are bad for this reason or that reason. Well, then why isn't an education monopoly bad?
Because you have to protect the children.
Yeah, but then they say things like, look at how well government education works around the world. Look at Finland, look at Sweden. I think those are the top two education systems in the world, Finland being the top one, but both of them have school choice.
School choice, ultimately, it works. See what happened in New Orleans.
What had happened in New Orleans?
If you don't understand New Orleans after Katrina, New Orleans is now, I think almost over 50% of the schools now in New Orleans are charter, and everything is up. Reading, math, and it's the only large-scale city in America that's adopted charter schools and math, mostly because of that necessity. And it's truly being this sort of beacon of what everyone said school choice would be. Hey, what do you know? It's doing the job. So it's a real life. This isn't, some theoretical thing on paper. Here's something happening in real life, and hey, it's doing exactly what we thought we told people 20 years now what would happen.
Yeah, I know our local charter school here, my daughter goes to it, and it consistently outperforms every other school in the county, and we got some good schools around here. I mean, I'm not the one who's going to say that every government school is terrible. No, some of them are really good, but the charter school consistently outperforms them.
Exactly. So, some people think, like you said, it will be the end of neighborhood schools and all this, that, but I'm sure those will exist.
Sure.
They just to make sure they provide the quality education that other schools do.
Okay, so apparently people who have Googled the name Santorum, which I have not done, find something that is probably not best mentioned on a podcast that I'm trying to keep from being labeled explicit by iTunes.
Google it, you'll definitely get a bit of a laugh out of it.
I think our listeners have probably Googled it themselves by now, probably as soon as we said it.
Yeah, that's true. There have been plenty of people who've had bad things show up on their, you're in the public eye. And this goes all the way back to, what was that, 03, 04, when, if you Google George Bush, the first thing that came up was miserable failure.
Yeah.
And for as long as Google has been popular, people have been exploiting it.
Well, and there was a and I'm not sure what it was because I never saw them, but I remember it was the talk of the internet when people started doing Google image searches of First Lady Michelle Obama, and all these weird images of her photoshopped, I guess, or whatever, started showing up at the top.
You're in the public eye, or politicians are going to end up peeps. You're going to take some people off. And, it clearly is. People really aren't trying to be libelous or slanderous, because you have to be an idiot to think that this is legitimate. Just because you get your feelings hurt. This is a First Amendment protection.
Yeah, but now Santorum has contacted Google and tried to get them to get those results taken off. And Google has just said, sorry, we don't do that.
On Google, that said that's Chinese.
Well, that's true, but yeah, there are a few more repercussions in China than there are here. Here you at least have free speech, and if they stand up to Santorum, then Santorum doesn't have anything he can do. He could try to take them to court, but a judge would just say, sorry, it's the First Amendment, and they're not treating you any different. He's trying to say, well, if this were a Democrat, they would have taken off, and here's an exact quote. I suspect if something was up there like that about Joe Biden, they'd get rid of it. No, they wouldn't. They'd let those things stand. That's what they do. They'd lose all credibility if they started doing things like that.
I mean, if, say, President Obama tried to, get all the images of him as a Muslim or something taken off, I'm sure Rick Santorum and all the other Republicans would be screaming bloody murder over this.
Yeah.
I remember it was all Michael Moore, Obama with him, Obama, Carter.
There was one with Bill Gates, I remember.
It happens on both sides of the aisle. That people aren't political. It is the nature of the beast. Hire a couple of guys who are tech and come in and be like Google search engine so that thing goes down, or your own sites get pumped up.
Well, Google does their best to prevent that. I mean, if you go into your website and start putting in a whole bunch of words that don't have anything to do with your site and like hiding it, making it the same color as the background, or putting in a 1 pixel div tag or something like that, and Google catches you on it, they kick you off their results.
Right. As far as Rick Santorum goes, I mean, the story behind it is pretty humorous. Essentially, he said, the quote is, this Rick Santorum quote discussing homosexuality in every society. The definition of marriage has not ever, to my knowledge, included homosexuality. That does not pick on homosexuality. It's not, man on child, man on dog, or whatever the case might be. At which point it angered, various gay rights groups. And Mr. Dan Savage launched a campaign to redefine Santorum in the most fluid way possible, ended up going viral. That's why it now is top seeming Santorum's own official webpage. You Google his name. When you see stupid things he get, you're going to tick people off.
Well, and he wants to be president. Does he honestly think that if he gets to be president, he won't be getting it right and left from Jay Leno and everyone else?
Obviously not. He's attractive. You will take it off.
I mean, it's not exactly a requirement laid down by the Constitution, but I think if you're going to be president of the United States, one of the things you need is a thick skin.
Oh, that's what I freaking forgot to talk about.
What's that?
Did you see about Obama having something of a thought police going on?
What's this?
There's now the website attackwatch.com, which website promotes to get the facts and fight the smears for attacks against the President of the United States. You can actually list who is saying them and what their accusations are.
Wow. I wouldn't really mind it so much if it's just like, hey, if you see an attack on the president, post it here and we'll rebut the argument. That I wouldn't have problems with. But you're saying they actually want the identities of the people who've been posting it?
If you can provide it, it just reeks to me, trying to censor people. Everyone comes to censor with tinfoil hat time, but sort of start trying to make enemies lists.
Yeah, because if they start they'll have a list of people who are criticizing the president, and if that doesn't make you uncomfortable, then you don't know your history.
And I'm sure, this is getting no way with Obama, then, I'm sure. There have been other times when other presidents have kept an enemies list puts on a formal private manner. This is right out there in your face.
Well, he did say he wanted a transparent administration.
That is very true. Now he doesn't even care. He's openly gathering in enemy's affairs.
I don't know. It'll be worth keeping an eye on this. I don't think it's time to hit the panic button yet, but yeah, this is a little disturbing.
Change we need, baby. Change we need.
Don't look now, but it's this week's biggest Bogon Emitter. You know who it is this week?
Let's see, I believe that's the media for once again jumping on the science train without knowing what the heck they're talking about.
Yes, yet again, the news media going off, and of course, I've covered lots of times where they've gotten political stuff wrong and scientific stuff wrong, and this is where they got the scientific stuff wrong. Unless you really do think that Einstein's theory of relativity has been completely disproved and overturned.
I mean, I would like to know more about this, because, there's definitely an interesting theory to go down and to research some more, Well, it's definitely an interesting result. And what happened was at CERN, they sent a whole bunch of neutrinos down 730 kilometers. And they timed it with a precision of, I think, a little over 6 nanoseconds, so less than 7 nanoseconds. And the neutrinos reached the detector 60 nanoseconds faster than the speed of light. But obviously, like I said, the papers are, various factors weren't calculated into that. We're not admiring into it. Definitely a very interesting result. One that's a more study, because
it is, but I mean, to keep it in perspective, it's 20 parts per million above the speed of light.
Right.
And we don't really know what these neutrinos are doing.
This reminds me a lot of, 2 years ago when the news media jumped on us finding the quote-unquote missing link.
Right, with Ida.
Yeah, and, it ended up blowing up in everybody's face.
Right.
Maybe not quite this big, but I think it just reminds me of, okay, somebody saw a neat headline, didn't bother to look at anything, and just printed it off.
But, I mean, we've got stories saying this in places like the New York Times, and but IO9 did a really good look at it. In fact, I like the title of it was Faster Than Light Neutrinos? Not So Fast. So they're definitely urging caution about this. This is a cool observation, but there's just a lot of things we don't know. We know that they got their 60 nanoseconds ahead of when they should, but we don't know why. But one thing I think we do know is that it's not going to overturn relativity, because if relativity didn't work, then our GPS satellites wouldn't work.
The odds of this can overturn relativity is, I think, very minimal.
Well, it may require a modification of relativity, but that happens all the time in science.
Exactly. Like I said, if you have to throw out a theory that currently all or GPS, so many of the other ideas, physics are based off of that. What does that say about physics in the last 100 years?
Right. But this article written by Dr. Dave Goldberg, he points out that if neutrinos travel the speed of light, then when supernova 1987A reached our telescopes, before that happened, we should have gotten this big wave of neutrinos hitting us with this big lag. And it didn't. It was the lag you would expect just from the fact that neutrinos get sent out first, but not like the neutrinos traveling faster than the speed of light to get here.
The thing was, the neutrinos did get here first, but it was only like 3 hours, whereas he said if the neutrinos were traveling at the same speed they were there at CERN, it would have been about 3 years.
Yeah, something like that. And these are different types of neutrinos, and the neutrinos at CERN were much more energetic. But it's a cool discovery. My thinking is maybe there's some kind of quantum effect going on, because, it doesn't play nice with relativity.
Yeah.
And maybe this will lead to a refinement of relativity, or maybe even a new discovery in quantum mechanics, but I don't think it's just going to overturn all of Einstein.
Right. My limited physics knowledge says, it's a really cool discovery, maybe not quite the whole game out to be. But that doesn't make for a good headline.
No, it doesn't. They gotta go for the sensation. Oh, what was that Chris Pirillo quote?
I got it. It's, it's always been faster than the speed of light, the speed of stupid.
And I think as fast as the stupid travel through the news media, they're the only ones who could possibly be this week's biggest Bogon Emitter. Well, maybe you'd better put on that tinfoil hat after all, because it's time to face this week's
Idiot Extraordinaire!
So this week, it's a YouTube user named HeyRuka. Did you see any of this video?
I watched about a minute and a half of it, and after that, it just stupid. It burns. and in fact, most of where you should find out be able to see is I just clicked and the video has been removed.
Well, the link I have is to a mirror.
That's what I'm saying. The link, I just clicked the link in your shout out said it is.
Oh, well, I'll try to find another updated one. But apparently she is someone who is trying to find a rational scientific basis for racism.
I mean, he pulled the Hitler card out here, but, you know, it's like when Hitler was like, oh, there's genetic superiority and all that stuff, and it was just to prop things up. And it's just a stupid, idiotic argument.
Well, let's listen to what she actually says.
So, you say that races don't exist, and that, or races are all the same and equal, and that individuals are all equal. How can you say that? It's not just skin deep, it's genetic, it's ingrained in our biology.
No, it's not.
Oh, no, Shane, I mean, why do stereotypes exist? It's only because Latino people are lazy, or only because black people like fried chicken, only because white people are all hoity-toity. It's just genetics, man.
I don't know. I love fried chicken myself, so what does that say about me? No, there are no black genes, there are no Mexican genes, there are no white genes. You know, the most they can do with genetics, and I think this is actually pretty cool, you can, for like a few $100s, I think, get a genetic test done, and they'll trace back all of your lineages and where they were. And so if they see a whole bunch of lines going through, say, Europe, and this is like DNA from a crime scene, they can say, well, there are all these lines going through Europe, you're probably looking for a white guy. There are all these lineages that going straight to Africa, so it may be a black guy, or they're all going through Asia or wherever. But that's really more of an inference. There aren't any real genes that are, you know, like this is a black person's genes versus this is a white person's genes.
Well, really the only genes that is essentially melanin production, and also some deals in hair. But that's about it.
Yeah, and things like a wider nose, things like that. But it's really just superficial things like that. But that's not the same thing as saying that these whatever genetic developments trigger different levels of melanin also trigger different levels in IQ. I mean, how do you get from one to the other?
It was just a blatant racist. That's all you can say.
What does she think she's doing there?
Trying to look smart.
She's failing.
Exactly, so somebody who has no idea about what evolution really is. And it's just for using the straw man version to support their arguments.
But they've actually done experiments even in high schools. That's how easy this is to do now, where they do some genetic tests just between the students, and they find out that students of two different races are no more different than two students of the same race as long as they're not closely related.
If I had a dust to pound my head on, it'd be there right now.
Yeah, that's about the only thing I have left to say about it, is that she just has to be this week's
Idiot Extraordinaire!
Well, that wraps up this colloquious edition of the Bogosity podcast. Please visit the forums at Bogosity.tv, where you can read the show notes and participate in discussions about these subjects and anything else you like. And if you'd like to participate in the Bogosity podcast, you can send a question, statement, news article, or rant to podcast@Bogosity.tv. If you put it in an MP3 file, it just might get played in the podcast. Thanks to my guest host, Jonathan Loche, for joining me this week, and thank you for listening. Until next time, here's a quote from Howard Zinn. There is no flag large enough to cover the shame of killing innocent people. The Bogosity podcast is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 3.0 Unported License.
Bogosity.